Well, hello, and welcome to Gallifrey's Most Wanted. I'm Ross Aiken. I'm Old Who.
My name is Melvin Pena, and I represent You Who.
And I'm here, but on my phone.
Yes, we had a little technical emergency. Jeff is having computer problems, but he's logged in via phone, and he sounds great. So it wasn't gonna, you weren't gonna be stuck with just me and Melvin.
Oh my God, that would have been a disaster.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so today's story is called "The Story in the Engine," and I went first last week, I think. So how about Melvin? You go first this week.
Okay, I think I went first last week, but that's not a problem. I don't have a problem with going first.
Okay.
Inuit Ellams absolutely crushed it as the writer of this story. An incredible post-colonial Doctor Who story, which is something we get very, very, very infrequently.
I don't, Jeff. I don't. Do you remember them ever going to an African country ever?
Other than location filming, but not
never
actually
set it there.
Africa. No, not at all.
Never set one in Africa at all.
And you'd have to go to expanded media for that. Like, one of the things that Doctor says in the episode is like, there's nothing more vivid than an ordinary life, which there's a First Doctor companion chronicle with the late Gene Marsh and Peter Purvis, set in the 50s, where
I love that one. God,
it is incredible, and they get stuck in with a Windrush family, and it really is just them, Stephen and Sarah Kingdom, leading an ordinary life amid racial turmoil of the early 50s. It's brilliant. But this is a very different look at that. This is 2019 Lagos, as we pronounce it here in the States, Lagos to everyone else. And it's really just an incredibly vibrant, brilliant, fecund is a word that kept coming to mind. Like, there's something very generative and fertile about this story. It feels very alive and very busy and rich and full in ways that it's really going to take, this episode is going to be great, and I can't wait to talk about it with y'all, this podcast episode. But this feels like it's going to take multiple watches to really get all of the
I don't think I could.
To really farm all of the meaning out of it. And it's really just really an incredible story. I could go on and on, but I just want to let we'll talk about it. I just loved it. I loved it.
I agree with you. I think it's great, and it's to me it is such an imaginative story.
Mm-hmm.
It has everything I want, everything I love about the not only Doctor Who science fiction storytelling, but British science fiction storytelling that has a little more whims. We don't have it a lot in American science fiction. It's very technical. It would have had to have been a real ship or something. A giant spider in a web of story energy, and that the power of stories, all that is wrapped up in this, just like a children's book. That's what I kept seeing. Like, you know what I mean? The imagination of a Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Giant, or what is it? James and the Giant Peach, or Willy Wonka.
Peach, yeah.
That kind of imagination. Frank Baum, Wizard of Oz. But I thought it was absolutely beautiful, and I really, how they're talking about the Doctor having brown, as he said, this brown skin. That is just wonderful. It was I loved everything about it. This is probably going to be one. I think this will, no matter how the season ends, this may be my favorite episode of the season. I don't think anything else could top it, because I could pop this in randomly and watch it again.
And just watch a random
I think this is one that, like last week, we all said, I may not want to rewatch it again because it was so hard, so painful. But I mean, we liked it, but it's a tough one to want. It doesn't scream rewatch me, please.
Mm-hmm.
This screams rewatch me. So, Jeffrey?
It's funny you talk about being reminded of children's storytelling. And I was taken straight back to primary school and being told tales of Anansi, the spider.
Oh, cool.
Going way back to primary school. I mean, Coventry's always had a very diverse ethnic population. And so it just took me back to childhood and being a kid again. And I love when Doctor Who does that. It's why I love Jodie's era so much, because it makes me feel like a kid again. But here, last night, I can't express how important it is for a black doctor to have black writers
Yep.
writing for them. And actually, because there's such a rich, deep culture that comes out of Africa. We have been to Africa before in Doctor Who. We've been to Egypt, off the top of my head. That counts as the African continent, but
Not
yeah,
sub-Sahara,
actually having something so vitally African,
Yep.
is a really nice experience, especially for white viewers who we all have our own cultures. You have your culture, Melvin, and it's we don't get a glimpse into African culture very often in media. And for Doctor Who to be doing this with an all-black cast, we only see one white face in that episode, and that's Mrs. Flood.
Yep. And the
I
patient.
think that's great.
And the patient,
Yeah.
and the patient.
And the
Oh,
patient. But again, that's
no.
located within a subset of the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
We get what you mean. Yeah.
I mean, this is what I want Doctor Who to be doing,
Yep.
and I'm glad that we're getting there now. I was very down on this era by the end of last season, and now I am thinking this actually is some of the strongest Doctor Who we've had in years. The last 4 episodes have all been exactly what I look for in Doctor Who.
Yeah, I agree. It's just I was flabbergasted, and by how big a swing it was from last week. This is a palate cleanse. This is a well-timed. This is strategically placed here. This is the perfect. I don't think this being the first episode would not have been a good idea, and before last week's. But I think it is the perfect episode as we're getting closer to the finale of take a breath, enjoy the ride. Isn't this fantabulous? Isn't this great? Look, we're gonna still talk about. They don't really. Is it an issue about race? An episode about race? No, it's not. But they do take a moment to let it be known and to subtly, and I think it's subtly, say there is something about having a place. I don't know. It's just I loved. I don't think there's a weak part in it, and the cast, everyone in the cast, every one of them was amazing, and they shined because they were given something. I think it's because they were given a great script. You know what I mean? I think it would have been hard to I think it would have been pain if I think they gave their all and the script just helped them, and every aspect of the story lifted it up a little bit more. The special effects, I love the spider and the building on the top and the webs. I liked everything about the design. The hall, the alley, and the going down to the barbershop made me feel like I was a little 80s Doctor Who, and they're in a studio, and it's like, oh man, you did it okay at the top, but I'm really starting to see that this is inside the building because you need it to be inside so you can shoot the stuff. But I loved it; it looked gorgeous, and the wall where the stories appeared.
I want to take.
Beautiful.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, Melvin. Go on.
No. You go.
I was just going to talk about the effects last night. I mean, there's all this talk about Disney money and all of that, but it doesn't need to be Disney films. It just needs to be used in the right places. I think there was very good use of special effects. Very simple. I loved the storytelling, and then how it became so much more vivid for the Doctor, because of course the Doctor's is such a richer, deeper level of stories to tell. Yeah, fascinating. Sorry, Melvin, go on.
No. I mean, I can take that up really quick. I mean, just the effects stuff. Like, yeah, the spider. I mean, I gasped. I mean, there were a couple, 2 or 3 points in this episode where I just gasped. Like, I didn't have the air or the context to believe really what I was seeing on the screen. And when they panned out to show the spider traversing the web, I mean, it almost has I mean, we keep making. I mean, this is the thing. You were saying it's not about race, but we keep making sort of Anglo-centric comparisons because that's our basis. You know,
Yeah,
that's
see,
the
Jeff, we
cultural.
would never
That's
been taught.
that's
Yeah,
the cultural hegemony that we are operating out of. But like for me, it's like it almost gives you that sort of we were talking about. I was mentioning Beetlejuice last week, but you almost get that sort of Tim Burton stop motion feel. Like it doesn't feel like CGI. It feels
no,
organic and lived in, and like it's consistent with the rest of the episode. Not that it's like what we mentioned in the Robot Revolution, where you know the scenes outside look like green screen compared to the things that are set inside. There's something about the way that those effects are presented, whether it's the storyboard inside the barbershop that gives us the painted animated effects, or the televisual effects when the doctor is telling the story, that the size of the screen changes, the anamorphic lens, as it were. But that there's something really that everything feels of a piece of this episode in terms of the effects, in terms of the set dressing, the set design. Like Inua Ellams in Stefan Powell Unleashed was walking through that barbershop set and was just, he was, he's obviously a playwright, and this episode is sort of set in the same universe as his play, The Barbershop Chronicles, which RTD talks about having gone and seen. But that there's something about the setting itself that, whether it's the alleyway, whether it's the marketplace, and they built, the marketplace set in the Bad Wolf Studios. And there's something about, I think they said they had 80 extras in that scene. But if you look at it again, like, I mean, obviously
I thought
some
that
of
was
that
location.
some
I
of
thought that part was location. Damn.
It looks location. It looks, once you know that there were only 80 extras, like that there is obviously some CG work being done there, but like it feels organic. It feels natural. So that's what I have to say about the effects stuff. And I loved it. I thought it was great.
I like that the main part is tactile, that they're in that sit,
yeah,
the barbershop.
Yep.
That the use of special effects is deliberate, and there's a lot less of it, and it's really about the people, because there's also the thing about the doctor getting mad at Omo, his friend.
Yeah.
His dear friend, because you're going to sacrifice me. He's like, I'm sorry. You're the only person I thought could help. And he's not trying to rescue himself.
Yeah.
His intent is not to, he just wants the other three guys home. And the only way he could get his friends and customers home is hope the doctor showed up.
Mm-hmm. But I do want to go back really quick, because you said earlier that this episode, quote, isn't about race, and it isn't, but it also is in certain ways. And I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just want to present sort of my sort of thoughts on that, because I mean, I do have my own sort of cultural sort of background, but for me, this was a really interesting and immersive episode for that reason, because you really have, and it's one of the things that for me recontextualizes a lot of what we've been talking about the Doctor for the last sort of season and a half. Is we talk about the sort of I don't know that we've necessarily framed it this way, but I feel like it comes across as a sort of manic characterization, where he's 1 minute weeping and the next minute very serious. 1 minute he's enraged and the next minute he's very calm. And this idea of not knowing how to place this Doctor. And I feel like Inua Ellam's script, which you were talking about, which is brilliant because it really gives us the Doctor immersed in this culture, which again, it's not his culture, but it's one he feels welcome in. It's one he feels a part of. It's one he feels embraced by. And for me, that brings up the idea, and I don't know that y'all would be 100% familiar with it, or our readers or our listeners, but like it's the idea of code switching, which is the idea that dependent, if you are from an ethnic minority, and it's not dissimilar. Like there are white people do it as well. Like, when you're around friends, you talk differently than you would when you're in a business meeting. Like that's sort of the essence of what code switching is. And for the Doctor, it's, the way you talk to a villain or an enemy or whatever we're used to, the sort of logorrhea that the Doctor can have during his more speechy moments, where he'll just talk and like there's, what do we call it? The sort of sci-fi speak, the sci-fi gibberish. But here it's
technobabble.
Yeah, technobabble. That's the word. Sorry, I've listened. I've known that word all my life, and it just disappeared from my head. but this idea that you speak more colloquially, and he does that. Like he takes on an African inflection at points. He takes on those sort of speech patterns, and that idea of code switching, I feel like, is not one that we have that it really any that I've heard in any discourse on on Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor, and it's one that never occurred to me until watching this episode, because again, it is so immersive in this particular culture, which again is a post-colonial culture. The beginning, the pre-title sequence, if you read, there's a prequel story that Inua Ellams wrote that was posted on the Doctor Who website, which really fleshes out that intro story that Omo tells about how he met the Doctor. Mm-hmm. And the setting of it is I think it's 1960s, early 19, like sort of 1963, 1964, sort of outside of Lagos, Nigeria, and the illegal work that British colonialists were doing to install oil mining equipment. And it was an oil fire, like there was an oil leakage, and there was an oil. So this is like deals with, you know, environmental pollution, illegal drilling. Like, again, these are things that are contemporary to us now. But it's one of those things where in a post-colonial setting, like we are being introduced, we are brought into this story, into the Doctor's story, into Omo's story about the Doctor in this story by colonial malfeasance. So I just wanted to bring all that stuff in there because, again, it isn't, the story is not about race.
No,
but this stuff is in the background. It informs the story.
Yeah, and it's about him saying, because I'm in this body this time, this is where I'm going to feel more, this is where I've been felt more welcome. And you think about it, the first Doctor is an old crotchety British guy. But he's landed in London, so maybe, and so I don't think we've seen this to where the regeneration has affected the Doctor like this, to where he, I'm not always going to be invisible if I'm around humans because they sometimes can't see past color.
And it's also it's not discussed in the episode either, but Lagos, however you want to pronounce it, in Nigeria is also like it's been codified there for a long time that they're very anti-LGBTQ in terms of the civic culture, that there are laws against it, there are rules against it, there are punishments for it. So like that is also sort of in the background here, that this is a place where he feels welcome. And there's that sense of which the barbershop sort of exists in a nested narrative. Like it is a place outside of this place where he can truly be himself, if that makes any sense. For me, it reminds me of Bloodsport, weirdly, but everything reminds me of Bloodsport, the Jean-Claude Van Damme 1989 classic film, where the fighting tournament takes place in Kowloon Walled City, which I had a buddy who was from Hong Kong originally, who came and guest lectured to my class. Like one of the absolute privileges of my life to have him come and talk about how the triad, like the Hong Kong mafia, like ran Kowloon Walled City sort of extrajudicially from like Hong Kong, especially at that point, which would have been a British colony. Like, and so you just like see these nested ideas as well. And so this, I feel like, is happening here as well, where the barbershop sort of exists outside of its context, but is really sort of embedded in it as well.
Yeah. Well,
I think what's interesting. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think what's interesting is the use of the barbershop, which is something that crops up in almost everything that has black sort of like roots to it.
Because
the barbershop is a home away from home, and it's a place where men can go and just be with men. It's almost a religious or like a help group to a degree. It allows young black men and old black men and to be together and to share and to talk and to laugh
and to teach each other. You got to think about it. It's a good place, because I think we all, Jeff, you bring up a big point, because definitely in this culture, in our country, there is a culture of the African-American barbershop being a communal, a place of fellowship, like a parish hall would be. I take the bus down Broad Street. There are 3 or 4 20-chair barbershops. and it's all the African American men that live in that neighborhood, and they all go in, and you'll see them sitting and chatting, and it's always you can just everybody's in there, and you can see them, they're laughing, having a good time. And I think other places, when I was a kid, the comic shop, there was like a cadre when I was where we would hang out and we all were friends and we'd go to movies to get, you know what I mean? And there are places where I don't know, when you're a kid, maybe it'd be the library or whatever, that
Yep.
place where you can go and just be with and have a safe space. I mean, nowadays we use the term a safe space.
And there, that's a point where I can intercede again, having been an academic and thought about not only African American literature, and we do need to say, foreground that I'm Mexican American, y'all are white in background, so it's like we
Yeah,
have
I
to
can't get much
we
whiter
do
than
need
me.
to foreground that we don't have authority to talk about Black spaces, but what we can talk about is, you just brought it up, Ross. You brought it up 100%, and it is absolutely the glue that holds this together. Is that Homi Bhabha, who's a famous post-colonial theorist, wrote about third spaces, which is very similar to what you're talking. You even mentioned third space, which is something that's been co-opted by the general culture as a place that's not home, not work, but a place where you feel comfortable and at home and safe. And it's been co-opted into the idea of a safe space also. But in post-colonial theory, it's the place uh, uh, where difference is celebrated, where difference is collapsed, where hierarchies are not necessarily observed. Like you were talking about, like multi-generational people can meet at a barber shop or their coffee house or their comic book shop or the local library. And there is a sort of, this is a place where that kind of sharing and that kind of safety and that kind of, it's also a place where you can think about it in terms of, again, in terms of post-colonial ideology, like that this is a place where revolutionary ideas can be brought up and addressed and talked about and discussed. So I just wanted to make sure that we made that bridge as well. That this is it's not necessarily exclusive to Black cultures,
No.
but that this is how it's framed here.
Oh yeah.
We had a show on British TV called Desmond's, which was all about a barbershop,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a full black cast, and that ran for quite a long time, and everyone watched it. It didn't matter where you came from, and you felt part of that as well. And that, I think that's what it is a welcoming place where all are welcome. But it's a specific place as well. It's like churches that are welcoming, but at the same time, um, they are also something else, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What and I
And
like
And that's the other part
I
about
loved it. I loved the setting. I loved the characters. I loved the people. It just reminded me, like I say, of being a kid and just seeing a window into something that I'm not privy to.
and
Um, but feeling like I'm welcome to be in there as
yes,
well. And
yep.
I think that's the important part
Mm-hmm.
is this is for all comers and it's for all watchers, and we all can take something away from this. But the most important thing that we take away from it is talking
Yep.
and telling our stories
Mm-hmm.
and
sharing.
sharing. Absolutely. It's what makes us human. It doesn't make us a specific race or a specific gender. It makes us human. And that is the key.
Yeah. I like this they talk about because we also these places are also about a community,
Yeah.
those and the three guys that are trapped there, Omo doesn't he tells how he lost the barbershop and it became the barber's possession. But the other guys were just doing simple, they came in for a haircut because there was this something was changing in their life in the community, something good, and they wanted to look nice, they wanted to celebrate, and they've been blocked from returning to that. But it shows that this is these gentlemen not only are friends here, this is their third space, but it's also they are all part of this bigger community that lives lives like everybody else.
Yep.
These are real people. Those quick one sentence descriptions of what they were why they were getting a haircut
Yep.
turned into, oh, this guy is this person. Oh man, that you know what I mean?
You understand
you
them. Yep.
understand
You
who
get,
that
you
person
feel
is.
like you're part of their lives.
Yeah, and why it's important for that Omo has gotten the doctor there. Why he needs to get these three men back, not
Yep.
because he's lost the barbershop,
Yep.
not because he's trapped there, but these three men have something to go home to, and
Yep.
he felt responsible.
And that's
It's
something that the
wonderful.
doctor again, we see the doctor in his totality here, which is something I don't think we usually get, which is when Omo reveals that to the doctor lashes out at him. He's angry, like he's
Yeah.
justified. Like, I don't know that, he's fought, gods and the toy maker and all these kind of like things that we've seen him do over the past 8, 13, 14 episodes or so. I don't know that I've ever seen his doctor this angry, like this upset at being
He's
personally
yeah.
betrayed.
Well, and more, I
Which
think
again,
it's
but
less the
that's
betrayal.
the doctor is
and-
not perfect. He's not a
yeah.
faultless hero. Like, he is a person, again, like Belinda tells him, you tell me you're not human, but that idea of feeling connected to a community in that barbershop is one of the most human things she's ever heard him say. And it's one of the most, like, again, his reaction to Omo being upset, feeling betrayed, feeling personally violated in a lot of ways. Like, that is, I don't know that it's necessarily doctorish, but it's this doctor. And I appreciate seeing that part of him as well. Because it also gives us that idea. It also gives us his forgiveness at the end when we go through that cycle of people forgiving each other and reconciling with each other. That idea of reconciliation, which is so important to this episode also. I'm sorry, Ross, I cut you off.
Yeah, and I like what I liked about it wasn't that he's not mad at Omo for bringing him into a dangerous situation. He's not mad at Omo for asking him to save these guys. He's mad because this was my safe space.
Yeah.
This is where I felt welcome, and now you're using this is not why I come here.
This is not, weirdly, this is not the place for a Doctor Who adventure, right?
Yeah, I don't.
Which is crazy.
I don't want that. I don't want my not outside world, but I don't want what makes me the Doctor sometimes, craziness and danger,
to get away from
here.
that.
This is just so, and that's why
incredible.
I mean, yeah, and he's so angry, and I was talking to Kirby, who's on my other podcast. We're in between doing some stuff. We're talking about this season, and he hadn't caught up, and I said, the one thing I said I'm loving it, but I'd like to see something more. The one thing I want is more of an episode about the Doctor, a little bit more about the Doctor. And I think this kind of that scratched that itch because I was thinking about it when it was when he's talking about the place, and then the interaction of them in the barbershop, it looks like a sitcom set.
Yeah,
and I love that in a way you're looking through the fourth wall into the most of the time. I went, okay, that's what I'm asking for. These beats. I wanted to see things about how the story is affecting him more than other people.
It's incredible because it's almost like Belinda gives, she is so intent on getting home, right? But at the beginning, when they discuss what this place means to him, it's like she gives, this is, we had a quote Dr. Light episode, last week, and this is the Doctor wanting a Dr. Light episode, which is amazing. Like, and that I think you're right. I think that is one of the reasons he's so upset, is because this is a place where he doesn't have to perform the Doctor. He can just be himself, which is, I mean, that's kind of incredible also.
Yeah, it's just he was so good in it.
I think this season has really been him hitting his stride. I think one of you mentioned that RTD had said that by the second season, shoot is really kind of hitting.
Really hit it. Yep.
But this gives us such a deeper understanding of his character, his Doctor. Like you say, like the Witchfinders gave us a much better glimpse of Jodie's Doctor. Because we are now having doctors who are in situations where they can't rely on their British
bravado,
white maleness to be a deciding or contributing factor in how they are accepted by whatever situation they are in. And so this time around, it's nice for us who probably resonate more with those whiter, maler doctors to be able to understand him and to go, I wish this had come sooner, but at the same time, this couldn't have come sooner. I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
So it falls where it needed to,
Yep.
and it comes so that we can have that deeper understanding, and may then be able to go back and look at older episodes with that deeper understanding and go, actually, I get it now. I
Yep.
completely get it. This gives us a window, and it shows us the Doctor with peace in their heart for
Yep.
once, which is nice, and it gives them a sense of belonging, because this is a Doctor with no home. He doesn't even have a people anymore, because even
Mm-hmm.
that has been taken away from him.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have a place where none of that really matters and he can just be, that really explains so much about the Doctor
Yeah.
And
as he stands today, because he's also dealing in a body that is also quite often removed from their home or their people,
mm-hmm.
and has to find a place to be.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly can't get over how good it was. I can't wait to rewatch it, and that doesn't happen very often. I mean, even with really good Doctor Who, it doesn't happen very often that I need to go back and rewatch it straight away. And I think what spoke volumes was I had a living room full of people, my wife, my daughters, their boyfriends, and all of us were just transfixed by the whole thing. Um, and that's the second time in the space of the last two episodes that my youngest daughter and her boyfriend have wanted to see what is happening in Doctor Who. And that in itself just fills my heart with glee.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes me so happy, because they were very disconnected last season. They weren't really interested. And now they are being sold on Doctor Who as decent, proper TV again. And I really like that.
I want to go back and pick up on what you were saying a couple moments ago, Jeff, about seeing the Doctor and thinking about him in a different way. Because another thing that this episode for me recontextualizes, and this is another one of the moments where I gasped, and I really, we're going to talk about it at some point. This feels like the perfect place to talk about it. Is sorry, this is. I mean, this is the weird thing. Is like I both started, I burst into tears and gasped at the same time. So like that's almost impossible to do. Like I almost choked on my own emotion when Joe Martin appeared, because it really, like, she spoke.
Thank you for your text warning. Do not go on social
Yep.
media.
Yeah,
I went,
yeah.
oh,
That's
that
exactly
bad.
what it was. That's exactly what it was for, because that should be a surprise to everyone. It should shock everyone. She has maybe 20 words in this episode, but she felt in command. I felt her presence. I felt her necessity, in a way that it really moved me to see her speak, to see her integrated into the episode as seamlessly as she was. Like there was no doubt that this was Doctor Who. There was no doubt that this was who she was, that she is a part of this legacy, that she is a part of this story. And I love that that's what she's talking about, is like she immediately comes in talking about her place in the Anansi myth and her place in this bet to win Abby from Anansi. Like it's beautiful and it's powerful and it's arresting and it's just amazing to see her. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Ross. Go ahead.
No, what I like was that that's the Doctor that did this, and he's remembering
Yes.
things from when he was her.
Yep.
And
that's the
like,
further sort of
LGBTQ
context, is that she was to marry to marry Abby and take her away, which also invokes previous, like, for your Doctor Who fans, it's going to invoke the idea of the story that Missy tells of when the Doctor kidnapped stole the moon and kidnapped the president's daughter, like in those season finales. But it also sort of makes her a part of, reminds us that she is part of the mythos of Doctor Who, and that she really, really, truly belongs here in a way that that I really haven't felt since her first appearance in the Fugitive of the Junoon. And again, that she mentions that she was a fugitive, which one of my problems is that people keep calling her the Fugitive Doctor as though that somehow defines who she is. What I loved was in the credits it just listed her as the Doctor, and I'm like, that is who she is. She is the Doctor.
Yeah.
But the Doctor is always the Doctor is the Doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the War Doctor. We call him the War Doctor, but
he's just the Doctor.
He's just the Doctor. Yeah.
Shorthand has, I think, dominated how we think of each Doctor. And now it's Doctor 1, Doctor 2, Doctor 3, the War Doctor, the Fugitive Doctor.
Yeah.
It's not. It's the Doctor is the Doctor is the Doctor, and they're
Yeah,
the same person on the same journey, just with different faces.
And I also love that in this, it right before that scene, you get actually it's when the Doctor first enters, and they're almost sort of playing the dozens with the Doctor, which is also something we don't see, which is also based in sort of African American cultural traditions, where one of them, I can't remember which of the haircut guys, says, "Yeah, we know who you are, intergalactic busybody time lord, last of his kind," and so on, which really just sort of punctures that idea of the Doctor as something that's more or better than us. That in this scenario, in this place, they are one of us. They're just another person. And again, like that, Jo Martin feels integrated into that as well. She feels completely like she belongs in this place. And that, again, it just like, it was so shocking and so like it filled me with awe and wonder and terror. Like it was like all of these things at once. Like, again, I gasped and I cried at the same time just to see her appear.
Yeah, I'm hoping that because they took the time to bring her in, get her back in costume and say more lines, where they were fine just using clips of everybody else. They didn't, please, this, it's probably not going to happen, but maybe it's a reason you're going to use her again.
Yep.
Have them have these two amazing Doctors have an adventure together. And I think that would be freaking amazing. And that was her in the African culture being influencing it, like you were saying.
Yep.
It just, I can't wait for her audios. I just want to see her running around being the Doctor. I finally got her TARDIS. I found somebody in America had one and sold it cheap. Now I just need her figure, and I'll be a happy camper.
Yeah, I need her figure as well. I'm desperate for it.
I need her Funko Pop. I need a Funko Pop doll of the Jo Martin Doctor immediately. Like, I need it immediately. But yeah, I mean, I can really very briefly, if y'all haven't listened to it, I know some of our many of our listeners will have. The first set of the Fugitive Doctor and her first appearance in Big Finish as in the coda of the Once and Future. Like, that coda is maybe it's one of the top 3 for me of that Destiny, or not Destiny of the Doctor, that was totally different, of the Once and Future range.
Yeah,
like,
I need to listen to them in a row because
are really fun. The first set, like, for me, the third story really, and this is the thing, one of the reasons I was so moved by her appearance in this story is that the third story in that first Fugitive Doctor box set is the one where it really feels like they're writing for her voice. And not necessarily her Doctor's voice, but Jo Martin's voice, because it feels like the first 2 stories in that set write for generic Doctor, and the words feel uncomfortable in her mouth, which is the other thing that really moved me about her appearance in this story, is that these words felt like they were written for Jo Martin's Doctor. They felt short, declarative, natural in her voice. Like, if you watch Stefan Paul Unleashed, you will see, she gets a little interview, and there's a behind the scenes YouTube video as well. Listen to the way she talks, and then listen to the way she talks in this episode. Like, Inua Ellams understands her voice. And I feel like what we were talking about earlier about having a black writer write a black Doctor, it's all part of this. Like, that you get the vocal rhythms, like you get, and not necessarily of black people, but like you get someone who is writing for these voices, and that is incredibly important. Whether it's Shooty or the people in the barbershop or Jo Martin, and you were saying earlier, Ross, that every single character in this episode, like they sound right, and there is really something very powerful about that. And I love that Jo Martin is part of that, because it really situates her in a way we have never seen before. And it's one of the reasons
mentioned
I've always said
earlier.
that I want, like, this is also, it's not only post-colonial Doctor Who, it's also Afrofuturism, which is something I've always wanted. It's like, where do Black people belong in science fiction? And like, this is that. This is finally giving us that in a way that, you know, not even I feel like Rosa did in a lot of ways, but like we're moving that way, and that is very encouraging. Also, sorry to interrupt you, Jeff.
That's all right. I was just going to say, going back to Joe Martin, she has now played the Doctor a few times, and she's had a chance to sort of become comfortable as the Doctor as well, because you can't just stick someone in and go, right, you're Doctor Who now, have at it,
Yeah.
without expecting there to be a little. Even Pat Troughton, as great a Doctor as he is, and he was very good in those early episodes, not that we can see them, but he is still finding his way into the part as well.
Yep.
You know, I think every actor has to find their into the character, but once they're in the character, I don't think they ever really come back out of it again either. It's there, it's intuitive, it's instinctual. You just listen to the old Doctors picking up where they left off in Big Finish, and it's magnificent. And I think the Doctor is one of those parts that when it becomes a part of your DNA as an actor, that's it. It's in there. And I think Joe is very there, and I think Shooty is very there now.
Yep.
And that's only for the benefit of our beloved little show, which is doing. And again, this is the second time, although this one's much more rewatchable than last week's, but this is second time that we're saying this is must-see TV. This is doing important stuff, and it's doing it well, which just makes you proud of being a Doctor Who fan and makes you happy that Doctor Who can be anything and everything for anyone and everyone. And that's really the key, isn't it? That's what gives Doctor Who its longevity, and that's what makes it such a beloved franchise across the world, is that it can speak to multiple people from multiple cultures and multiple languages, and even multiple faiths and beliefs. It does all of that. There's no other sci-fi show like Doctor Who, and that's why it's important and must be treasured, because it gives us absolute gems like last night's episode.
Yeah,
Go on.
I agree with Jeff on that a lot, almost exactly on everything you're saying. It's that it's very Doctor Who, and that's what I was kind of at the beginning. Is you couldn't, no other show would have a giant spider walking through time in a barber shop.
Incredible.
No one would do it. No one would do it. And if you had told me this plot, I would go, I could see them trying in the 80s and it looking a bit dodgy. And then they
It
did
would
it.
probably also come off as horribly racist in the 80s.
Yeah.
as
Oh,
well.
yeah. You know, it would be. There's that episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Oh my God!
God, you know which one I'm talking.
Yeah, I know
Code
exactly.
of Honor in the first
where they try to
season,
marry off
the
Tasha
director
Yar.
decided to make these aliens just black people and put all them in all this shit. And it's like you're 2 minutes in and you go, "This is the racist shit I have seen."
Is that where they have the big fight on the climbing frame at the end?
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah. I know exactly the one you're talking about.
Oh my God!
The most racist Star Trek episode ever.
But yeah, no,
and
that's one of the great things about doing anything and going anywhere, is that that this story also gives you so many connections to, you know, again, it's one of the when we're talking about, it's not about race. Like there are ways in which stories like this in the past have sort of excluded other things or tried to include other things in a more ham-fisted way, whereas this, when you enter that the place where the heart of the engine is, you know, the brain, a brain that encloses a heart. I mean, there's something really beautiful about that, and really for me sort of evoked that redoes and revisits that scene from the Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, where you get that scene with the tree with all the little glowing fruits on it. But this feels much more organic, much more lived in, much more natural. But you walk into that room and there are bits and pieces of many different cultures. And the barber at one point tries to play himself off that he is in some way Dionysus or Saga or Loki. That he tries to pretend that he is those things. The Doctor eventually calls him out on that, which goes back to that idea in Lux that, and even the Giggle, where that these gods have to play by that rule that, you know, you have to tell, if you ask, they have to tell you the truth. So the Doctor continually is pressing him further and further to stop lying, to give me the real story, to give me the story that's at the heart of the story. And so you get you get that spinning through different mythologies. And when they get into that corridor, into that room, you see, and when Belinda comes in, she walks in front of the halo of, I believe it's Shiva. It looks like to me is the god of creation and the dancer, the cosmic dancer, which again gives her a cultural context as well. And she mentions that at the beginning, that her grandmother took her to India as often as she could to let her feel a part of her own culture, to feel safe, to feel welcome, to feel included, to feel enveloped, to feel immersed. And you get that in that scene as well, because you get all the different pieces of culture. For me, I want to know what y'all think about this too, because it comes in at the very end or at that final confrontation, where you see 3 books by Hemingway on the shelf. This Hemingway just was a bit weird to me, because you've got all these sort of cosmic and mythological things, and then you've got Hemingway. It's just a bit odd to me, but anyways.
Well, he kind of like one of the, great white savior part of books sometimes.
He also created apparently 6-toed cats.
Yeah, he likes 6-toed cats.
But well, that's the thing. Like the Hemingway,
I don't know. It always gets me. But maybe it's like leftover libraries, because a lot, leftovers from from the colonial world are still sitting around.
Yep.
We left when the English and other countries left. They left part of their culture there that had been opposed, and and a little bit of it has been adapted. It's it's mutual assimilation in some ways. People adapt to their surroundings, and their surroundings adapt to them, and sometimes in bad ways. So that may be it. And it just might have been a prop in the closet, and they shoved it on the damn.
No, but it's cool because he does mention there at the end.
And he's a storyteller. I mean, if you're going to have, he's a, Hemingway stories are powerful.
Of course.
And that's that's what I like. I want to talk about the storyteller element.
Yes.
The reason I like science fiction, the reason I like comic books, the reason I was a theater nerd and then worked in theaters for 20 some years is I want to tell stories. I don't give I'm not this thing about, I only watch movies with this actor. I only read comics by this artist. I don't give a shit about that. It's like certain music. I love music as storytelling too. I'm more drawn to songwriters. And you know what I mean? And I like Warren Zevon, Tom Waits, weird storytellers, and I like Springsteen, who's pretty straightforward. And then I just saw Sinners that has a ton of blues music, which is nothing but telling you the tale of, and there's a great line in that movie where Delroy Lindo goes, "This blues is us. It's the only thing that is us here." Is because blues is jazz is the only original American music, because blues comes from African music. You can trace it back to the slaves, and that's where blues comes from. That is its core ingredient. And that's what I liked about this, the power of story, that you drive an engine, the better the story, the farther you can go. And the faster you can go, the more imaginative you are, you're stronger, faster, you go further if you have good stories in you. And I love that message, because I feel that is also part of the message is,
yes,
find your stories, find your people, and share your stories, and it'll move you forward.
And it's also about liberation and stories of freedom, exactly what you're just talking about, because that's what leads you to the conclusion, is when the Doctor finally gets through to Abe / Abene, I believe her name was, that she tells the story. She reverses the situation, which is usually that the barber sits and cuts hair, and the person whose hair is getting cut tells a story. She sits down and trims the Doctor and tells this story of slave narratives where women would braid each other's hair, and the braids would make a map to freedom, to liberation. And that's one of the things that leads the Doctor and Belinda to that, to the story engine in the first place, is Abena, like of Abby, like braiding the story,
braiding his hair into
the
a
map
map,
into
and
his
him
hair.
and him just walking around doing this. It was and
absolutely
it's
beautiful.
shooting it up here.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm following the map. It was wonderful. I
mean,
like.
we've said a few times this isn't a story about race, and that's absolutely right. What this is a story about is about culture.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how culturally we all rely on storytelling, and we all rely on people who can tell stories. And that's why it works so well in the context of Doctor Who, which is nothing but storytelling and telling stories, even in the reality of its own universe. That's always been a big theme. I mean, we can go back to Cave of Skulls.
Yep.
Where they sit around and they're talking and they're sharing knowledge, or the lack of knowledge. But it's such human culture is about continuing our stories past our own ends as well, and past the point that we're not here anymore to tell that story. But if we maybe do one thing that is story worthy, we will live on in a way.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's because you got to think about the time man has the Homo sapiens have been around. It is a microscopic part of us where we have written stories. The like 99.9999999% of our history was shared
Oral
verbally
tradition.
out
Yep.
loud as a story and
Yep.
memorized.
Yep.
All
And
of
that's
our
how
religions
the
were
Greek
originally folk tales
Yep.
spoken aloud, and then eventually, when they developed written word, they write it down.
And
But
that's how
that
the
is
Greek epics began.
It's
Was
less
oral
than
storytelling.
it's like less than 4,000 years.
Yep.
That we have.
And that's one of the things that both makes it sort of more universal and more intimate, is that who has access and who is telling these stories, because that ends up being the barber's great gripe against the gods, is that he wants to supplant the gods because they have never given him credit for and he says that he's basically the person who started writing in the day, was codifying those stories, being able to share them beyond oral traditions. But he's looking for credit in a way that, again, makes it very contemporary, because obviously one of the things that we're talking about in our technological world is the and SoundCloud. It was a big story in the news this week that SoundCloud has made it a part of their new terms and conditions that if you're uploading music to their site, you are granting them access to train their AIs on it. So the idea of who gets credit for stories is important here, but also it brings it to a more intimate level, because like you were saying, and like we were talking about again with Hemingway, which was what I was trying to bring it back to earlier, was that he tells the barber at the end that he challenged Hemingway to tell him and this is a funny thing, because Hemingway is known for sort of like very terse, very sort of laconic prose. That he wasn't a big like flowery writer, but that he challenged Hemingway to a 6-word story. And so this is one of those things where, and it expands out to Doctor Who as well, because one of the things that we always talk about is people playing Doctor Who in the playgrounds. And by the Doctor saying, come up with a 6-word story, he makes storytelling available to everyone in a way that is very, very powerful as well, because who can't come up with 6 words? And like the fact is that doesn't define us also, because the barber has lived for countless centuries, and he keeps telling the barber, you come up with a story. Next time I visit, you'll owe me that 6-word story. So it's something that, again, is relevant to our contemporary world in terms of training AIs, and in terms of giving everyone access to story and their own story, and to be able to tell their own story.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there was I saw something in the news today about, I think it was a British law or something that's going through, that they're going to allow, AI to not worry about copyrighted material. The big tech guys want IP laws in this country gone, so they can just run everybody else's work through their computer and then sell shit product. Create content, which will be soulless, absolute drivel. Sorry, it's So I'm glad we're seeing a story about someone telling a story. Because the storytellers are
Story-making
important.
people at the
Storytellers
end
are
of the
really fucking important.
day.
And how incredible is it also to have this is for me one of the more effective. And if you go back and listen to, there was an episode of Trap One that I was on where we were talking about that Once and Future series, and it was the story specifically about the David Warner doctor meeting the Kit Eccleston doctor. But there was a moment where James Winstanley Wilder, I believe is his full name, makes a comment about how we love a doctor montage. And this really felt to me like one of the most sort of appropriate and natural ones in this context of the importance of stories, of telling your own personal story. And then we see, this is the thing, is the doctor at the beginning tells Belinda, this is the first time in a black body. I have many bodies. And then we see that at the end on the montage of all of the doctors coming through. So it feels sort of the most natural. And it's not a phrase that I like to use a lot, but this really did to me feel earned, in that you see the doctors and they don't feel intrusive. It feels like it feels natural in where we are, where we're at the story. But really, the doctor boiling his own story down to, I am born, I die, I'm born. Like, there's something really, really powerful about Doctor Who being that. And hearing that come out of his mouth as how he interprets his own story. And he says, they're all in there. And he says bickering. There's something really cute and lovely about Doctor Who being alive. The story of Doctor Who being a live story, something that is constantly changing, constantly being rewritten, constantly being reframed. And I don't think that's something we've talked about yet, but I feel like it's important to bring up.
Yeah, I really didn't think just seeing Ruth pop up was wonderful, but having it all tied into everybody and pausing on certain people. I think the length time certain people were on there was it Jodie.
Yeah, you got Jodie for an
because of
extended
because
moments.
of female, the barrier she broke, Ruth, shooting and the first and to show the first and second and to show the earlier guys. Really, to show Partnell too. They got to pause on him because you have to show him. You can't talk about all the doctors and not.
And I love that they showed him in color.
Yeah, I did too.
Mm-hmm.
Which again makes him living and vibrant in a way that, and I can't remember. I don't know if that was specially done for this or if that was a moment from one of the the Daleks in color. Maybe, I'm not sure.
From the Daleks in color, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it looked a little tidied up.
Brings that in too, because that's revising the stories. Again, it's the stories are living and growing and changing things, and I feel like
there's
it really
interpretation. Stories
really helps
repeated.
us recontextualize all of Doctor Who.
Yeah,
I mean,
I loved
it takes us all the way back to the animations, and then the Celestial Toy Maker on animation.
My God, it was so trippy.
How that is. But that's probably my favorite animation, and it's sort of elevated that story for me in a way that maybe seeing the actual episodes wouldn't have.
Yeah,
because there's no way they could do with the budget that they had then. We've had this conversation about Toy Maker before, but it's what you're saying about recontextualizing stories and giving them a new lease of life. No story is old and done. You've just got to find a new way of telling it.
Yeah,
and that's the key.
I was like that with the war games. I was like, how are you going to shrink this down? And it makes sense. And they did it. I'm like, crap, that is a lot of stuff to cut out. And it still makes 100% sense. And it was beautiful. And they find the color process was a little bit better than the Dalek one. It was a little tidier, I thought. And I loved it. Oh, and Jeff, the extra 2 discs were just your version. They weren't even Blu-ray discs. They were DVD discs of the British, but for American player. No, they weren't. They were just your version of what we got. So it had the screen, the main screens were the old one. I went, you just burned the whole fucking DVD on these, which is fine. I don't mind. I'm glad I got it. It was beautiful. I watched it. I was mesmerized by how they did a really good job. It was really well done. And see, it was a new way to watch the War Machines. And then I watched the War Machines because I started to, and I went, I want to watch the whole thing. It took me 3 days. But I like that story. So,
And it's the important thing, because again, we can get Doctor Who in all of these different formats. Like that's one of the things, like, and I hear it every week from the naysayers. Like, I don't know that this version of Doctor Who is for me. And I'm like, great, you've got all the collection box sets. Go watch them.
Go watch them.
Just get out of here. But like for me, I think also about like me growing up, because I did not grow up with Doctor Who, but one of the things that is immediately relevant to me when I hear people talking about all these conflicting versions of the Doctor, or like, what does this mean about this? How does this impact this story? What does this do to continuity? Like, I don't give a care. I don't give a crap. Like, I grew up with, Batman 89, which hit me at exactly the right time for what I needed from story. And at the same time as the Michael Keaton, Tim Burton, Jack Nicholson Batman was like, I was really obsessing about that. One of the local syndicated channels was showing Batman 66. And I started buying the comics, and like, you're getting, like, for me, that's at least 3 completely different versions of Batman. You've got the dark, brooding, like neo-noir Batman from Tim Burton. You've got the 1960s dancing civics teacher Batman, like that, these surfing, giant bombs in the movies.
I've
like,
never heard of. I'm gonna steal that for my comic book podcast. That Adam West is the civics
he's a
teacher,
dancing
Batman.
dancing
he
civics
fucking
teacher.
does give a fucking civics lesson
and
every episode.
And
that's why we pick up the trash, buddy.
But he's also like does contemporary like youth dances. Like,
I can't watch Pulp Fiction without when John Travolta's
thinking about Batman.
That's the Batman dance.
Yep,
he is doing the Batman dance.
But again, for me, these things were never. These were all Batman.
Yeah, they're all Batman.
And so this was the thing about Doctor Who. Once I entered the fandom, is this idea, this insistence on a strict adherence or a canonicity to Doctor Who stories. And for me, again, like, this is such an important, the story in the engine, Inua Ellams, it's so important to bring his voice into Doctor Who, because again, it just feels like week after week. This is week 5 or 6 now, depending on whether you count the Christmas special, where I feel like any of these episodes is a walk on it. Like, you could walk into Doctor Who knowing nothing and feel like you are welcome in Doctor Who by every single story this season.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm just this episode was exactly what I needed. After last week. It was I didn't know what to expect of it. When we saw the thing, it'll be I thought it was gonna be a scary one. And I like a scary one, so I was okay, I'll be into it. But it was just the exact story I needed it just works so well. Yep. I mean, I will watch this one over and over again. This will be I got an article. Which Doctor Who I want to watch? I'm going to watch the story in the engine.
Yep.
I think it's definitely the one where people say, what would be your introduction for a new fan to shoot his Doctor? I think this would be
perfect. Yep.
Yeah. I think this or Lux from this season would easily just convince someone. Yeah, the show for me.
Yep.
Yeah. Just wonderful. All right. Anything else before we wrap up?
For me, real quick, I loved that they also talked about, when he overloads the engine by hooking himself in at the end, that he's given them a never-ending story, because there's no way that Inua Ellams didn't grow up with that movie as well. Like, he's of an age where the never-ending story had to have been part of his just childhood watching, because at the end of that movie, they have to give the childlike empress a new name, which is one of the ways that you set the barber free, as well as that Omo had to give him a new name. And I just thought that was
father's.
That was so beautiful. Like, that really, really moved me and really touched me. So I wanted to bring that up as well. That, and I know it made me cry a little bit thinking about how much I missed Belinda last week, and it was wonderful to have her again. It felt like I really had missed her a lot, and from a very sort of like aesthetic point of view, I want to say that I love jumpsuits, and I think that she looked amazing in that jumpsuit. I just think she's so beautiful. Like, as a character, I love her, and it sort of tears me apart that you gestured toward it last week, Ross, that we lost her in Andor, and that we've only got a couple more episodes with her this season. Like, I already miss her. Like, she's so dear to me.
I read a review. Someone, don't normally read it, but someone the headline was like, oh, they're talking about um the writer was the person who shared it said, here's a person of African descent saying what it was to see and of Nigerian descent too, saying I got to see me
on screen
in Doctor Who more than ever. And it was really nice. And she talked about Belinda doing the same thing for other people, especially mentioning that thing about traveling. A dear friend of mine who I did theater with, her mother's from Minnesota and her dad's from India. And every year they would go and spend a month in India. So she could be around her grandmother and her aunties and her cousins and, have that, and her parents were very good about both, both heritage.
Yep.
More of the Minnesota meets Indian. Her mom learned how to make Indian food really well and stuff like that. But they would go and do that. And I liked it when Belinda said it. And maybe kind of because the doctor's doing that. This is a place, I feel comfortable. But I like the being part of it.
That she is included as well. Yeah.
He read that. And the writer says being her there too adds to it, and her story adds to that thing about being visible.
It does, and
be visible.
And I need to shout out here to three of my friends, Lakshmi, Vivek, and Suja, all of whom know that I have a fond and enduring love for the god Ganesh. They've each brought me back from trips to India little Ganesh idols. Ganesh is the elephant-faced god who is a god of scholars and of new beginnings, and that's always those are things that have always been really important to me. So I just want to make sure I shout them out here too, because I feel like they're part of my love for this story as well.
Cool. All right, guys. Let's do a round. Anybody's got recommendations? I'm gonna go first. Go see the movie Sinners. If you just need to go see it. If you like a scary movie, you like blues music, I think it's so good. I mean, it's just really, really good. It's just a good film, and it just happens to have cool vampire stuff, and it's just amazing. So go see it. See it in the theater. I'm glad I saw it in the theater. All right, Jeff, you have anything?
I would be remiss not to mention that I'm on the most recent episode of Nostalgia Tours with Rod, his new podcast, and had a really nice time chatting with him. I had big chucks. We had a lot of fun. Other than that, what would I recommend? Do you know what? I haven't really been doing anything or seeing anything. Just playing computer games. I've just still been playing Oblivion, so that's my life.
I can definitely recommend that episode of Nostalgia Tours. I listened to it yesterday while I was out kayaking on the lake and loved it. It's very, I love that the format for Nostalgia Tours, which started out one way, has become a really flexible one. And I really have a lot of time for a flexible format. And I really enjoyed all the, it's what you expect from Jeff. It's not, and I don't mean that in a cliche way, but you're gonna get. I put it out on the internet yesterday. Like, you get lots of Jody, you get lots of Hartnell. But it's a great conversation, and Rod, as much as he feigns to disdain the Jody Chibnall era, like, really gave you a lot of space and a lot of room to talk about it, and without judgment.
He really did.
He gave you some ribbing. He gave you some ribbing about it, but like gave you space. Yep. And speaking of which, like, really quick before we get away, I also want to say that I don't know if y'all noticed, but Inuit Elums, if you didn't watch Doctor Who Unleashed with Stefan Powell, appears in the episode, and it's really great to have the storyteller be a part of.
Who was it?
He's the guy in the market. He's the guy in the market when Belinda's trying to push her way through, and the cop shows up, and she's like, "Okay, who caused this disturbance?" He's the one who points at her, and she raises her hand sheepishly. Gotta love Belinda. I love Vera Setu so much. But shout out to him being able to be in. There's something really important about that too. But my recommendation for this week is, and I already put it out on Blue Sky, but there's a story by Matt Fitton called An Ordinary Life, and I mentioned it at the very beginning of the podcast. It's a First Doctor companion chronicle with Stephen Peter Purvis and the late Gene Marsh, Damian Lynch as Michael, again about a Windrush family in London in the 1950s, and the way that Stephen and Sarah who are perfect characters for this because they're from the far future, are sort of introduced to the idea of racial intolerance and racism. Like it's a powerful and an interesting story, and really great sort of First Doctor era narrative. So yeah, that's my rec for the week.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. It may not be on Sunday because I'm going to DC for the day, but we're going to plan that after this. But hey, please, thanks for listening, and we look forward to seeing you somewhere in time or space.